potential, or whatever you want to call it, to translate those images and those beliefs to the screen where they were accepted by the general population. So basically what he was trying to do is he was trying to make a movie just like David Cronenberg makes a movie, or just like Ken Russell makes a movie, or just like Brian Yuzna makes a movie, or just like Roman Polanski makes a movie, but he just never had whatever you want to call it. If you want to call it talent, to give it a name, you know, I believe he had a talent, but he had a talent that was above what we consider talent, you know, but he never had that mainstream talent to translate his vision to the screen where it would reach and influence a lot of people. Also, again about Ed Wood, I mean, think about the people he surrounded himself with, you know. I mean, this was a very dark character. I mean, he didn't come off as a dark character because, you know, he wasn't taken seriously. But he surrounded himself with Bela Lugosi, you know, an old horror movie actor who actually wanted to be buried in his Dracula cape. He surrounded himself with Criswell, who was this schlocky charlatan who predicted the future, which included colonizing other planets and people reverting to cannibalism. You know, Vampira, you know, this hostess for this late night horror show that showed all these horror movies, you know. You know, he surrounded himself with like junkies and you know, people who weren't accepted by mainstream society. I mean, you think about it, I mean, I've never gotten into this aspect of his life, you know. I mean, Tim Burton didn't get into it when he made the biography movie about him, and even the books get into it a little bit more, especially Nightmare of Ecstasy. But this was a very, very dark character who tried to keep a positive attitude about life and everything through the movies that he made and stuff. But when you think about what he made the movies about, what his subjects, what his topics were about and everything, and the people that he considered influential in his life, and the people that not only he surrounded himself with, but the people that gravitated towards him too. I mean, this is a very, very dark character that we only saw one face, you know. We just saw the tip of the iceberg, and hopefully one of these days somebody's going to be brave enough to bring out that other side of Ed Wood. Okay, we're going to get back into the same topic of these tapes that we were discussing before, and that's how the movies are an influence of the dark side, or show some part of the dark side, or basically have more truth than fiction to them. And we pretty much in length discussed the Frankenstein legend, and we got into the Dracula or the vampire legend. Two other popular legends are the mummy and the werewolf. Of course, the werewolf, you know, where the man is bitten by the animal and then he turns into the man animal, i.e. the werewolf. This goes clear back to the Necronomicon, where Abdul Azerad is talking about the cult that worships by the moon and transforms themselves into half man, half beast. And, you know, the theory of lycanthropy and all that kind of stuff. And I've never really I've seen entertaining versions of the werewolf, but I can't really say I've seen a version of the werewolf yet where it actually gets into the part of the werewolf being, you know, that subspecies of part man, part animal, and being an entire separate race apart from man in itself. It kind of touched on it a little bit in American Werewolf in London, and also in American Werewolf in Paris. But basically, those movies were made to entertain rather than enlighten. So, although I would recommend you watching them because it brings out some aspects that haven't been brought out before, I don't really see a lot of uh, improvement, if you will, upon the original Lon Chaney version, where he gets bit by the werewolf and then, or gets bit by the werewolf and then turns into one himself. There was an interesting version in the 30s where Henry Hall, who went on to be a great character actor for 30, 40 years, played the werewolf. It was called Werewolf of London. And it actually got into the thing not only about the wolfbane and the full moon, but also about the flower that has to bloom along with the full moon in order for the transformation to be complete. It also got into the fact that the werewolf legend originated in Tibet. For whatever reason, I don't know why, but we always consider the werewolf legend either in England or Scotland or Bavaria or even Transylvania, but the actual werewolf legend originated in Tibet. In fact, even the character in Werewolf of London went to in an exhibition in the mountains in Tibet to look for this rare flower that only blooms by the moon. And during that quest, he was bitten by the werewolf, and then which he turned into a werewolf. Also, what's interesting about this version, if you could even get it, it might even be destroyed by now, is when his transformation is happening. In the Lon Chaney version, you see him transforming from a man to a wolf right on the screen. But in this transformation, you got to remember, it's like the 30s when they did this, and their special effects weren't really that great. So what they do is he's walking by this walkway where there's pillars, and as he passes each pillar, he's turning more and more into a wolf and less into a man, which was really an interesting version, a way to do it. But I've really yet to see a really good movie about the werewolf and blending the mythology and the legend and the truth and the fact, and really exactly what the werewolf really is. I hope maybe someday they'll bring one out, but I really have yet to see one that actually brings out that goes beyond legend and gets into the ancient scriptures and the texts about what a werewolf is. Then, of course, I mentioned the Mummy. And there's been so many versions of the Mummy, and so many people have played the Mummy. And the new version is good, and it's interesting, and it does get into the part about the mummy, who is called Karis, is actually more or less the Lord of the Dead. And when he comes back, not only does he bring all the plagues and everything with him, but he also brings the dead back with him. So it actually gets into the idea that the return of the mummy is so disastrous because it's going to also herald the day of the dead rising and walking the earth, or on Armageddon, if you will, the end of the world, whatever you want to call it. And a lot of the movies I've noticed, never really got into that part of it. It was too touchy a subject. Pretty much they focused on the fact that this thing was coming back from 2,000 years and was brought back to life, by the Tana leaves, which is a lot of times they never get into that aspect of it, the properties of the Tana leaves. But, and then it came back into this world just to find its mate again.